Said before I left, make sure one of the boys films it when I'm not here.
And you want to get a good balance between the sounds, so you don't want one instrument to drown everything else out. So what I'll do now is I'll move over to the mixing desk and we'll go through a few things with the band.
I think one thing I'll say is if anyone wants to stand up and actually really take a look at what they're doing, go for it.
Yeah, I'm on.
Watch.
Dark, not black.
Sound check, guys, sound check.
Okay. So, one of the first things you need to do is you need to make sure you've got a good starting point, and that means balancing the backline. So that means making sure that everything on stage is set at a relatively good level. In this case, it's setting it relative to the drum kit. So, without anything in the PA at all, I'm just going to ask the band to play just so we can have a quick listen to their relative settings. So just play the drums quickly to give us an idea of the drums. Okay, and then if we could hear the bass guitar, please. So already we see the bass guitar needs to come up in volume slightly.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, to be honest.
Okay, that sounds about right to me. Tom, could I get your guitar, please? Okay, so that might be a fraction too quiet in relation to the drums, so could you bring that up, please? Okay. That'll be okay for a moment. And Ryan, could I? Okay. So that might be slightly too loud. So if you could just bring that down a fraction, please. Okay. So give us a quick play. That'll do to start with. Okay. So once we've got the backline roughly set up, we need to sound check. And what we do is, rather than getting them all to play at once, we sound check the instruments individually, and that lets us basically hear how they sound in isolation, make sure each channel we're using works, make sure that we're EQing it and getting the sound we want. Yep, if you want to come and have a look, feel free. And there is, within the music industry, there is a traditional way of doing things, which is always starting with the drums, then moving on to the bass, then moving on to the guitars, and then moving on to additional instruments and finally vocals. So we shall, don't ask me why that tradition is in that order, but that's just the natural way things are done, and it's become the industry standard. So if we could start off with some kick drum, please. And so if you could just stop for a minute. One thing also to be aware of is it's your place, if you're doing the sound, is to instruct the musicians. So Callum was hitting that a little bit too softly, I think. So could you give it a bit more welly, please? That's better. That's more like the kind of sound we want. And what I'm doing is using a technique known as boost and sweep. So I'm boosting the EQ on one of the channels and then sweeping the frequency to find where it sounds nasty. And then when you find something that sounds a little bit unnatural, you can then just take that down with the EQ until you get a sound that you're happy with. Okay, that'll do for a start. Now, could you do some snare drum for us, please? Sorry, keep going. So again, I'm doing the boost and sweep technique just to find out where it doesn't sound too nice, and then just bringing it down a little bit. And what you can also do on things such as drums and vocals is add a little bit of reverb, which is just an echo effect. Keep going. And as you can hear now, there's just a little bit of an echo on that, which just makes it sit better in the mix. Okay, and if you could do the rack tom, please. Floor tom, please. So you can hear there's quite a vibration on it. So again, I'm just sweeping the EQ round till I find where it doesn't sound too nice, and then just cutting it slightly. A touch of reverb. Okay, and if you could now play the whole drum kit for me for a moment, please. Okay. And the reason we get him to do that is just so we can balance the level of all the drums roughly to each other before we move on to the next thing, which convention dictates will be the bass guitar. Okay, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of that into the drummer's wedge or monitor, just because that's the sort of thing he'll need to hear. So, how's that, Cal? Okay, cool. Right, and now if I could get the guitar, and the conventional way we always do it is to the sound engineer's left first, so that would be Mr. Burton, if you could play for me, please. Longer. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch the EQ in and out so I can tell that what I'm doing is making an effect, because obviously if you've not mixed much before you might not be sure of what sound you're getting, so you can always put the EQ in and out just as a little comparison, just to check if what you're doing is helping the sound and if it's the way you want it to be sounding. So if you could just play for a minute while I do that, please. Cool, so as we saw there, taking it out just made the volume come up a little bit, probably a little bit too much relative to the other instruments. So it's always worth having a play around and making sure that everything's sitting the way you want it to. Now, Ryan, if you could play, please. Okay, that's fine. And now, last but by no means least, Aaron, if you could do some vocals for me, please.
Check.
Okay, so as we see here, Aaron is far too far away from the vocal mic. And of course, we haven't in any way staged this. So if you could get a little bit closer to the microphone, please. And again, although he's now close to the microphone, he's not loud enough. So, you know, don't feel worried to tell the singers as well as the musicians, you know, how they need to operate. And as you may be able to guess, again he is making a mistake. The way he's holding the microphone is cupping the end of it, and what that does is it narrows the sound and it muffles the sound. It generally makes the job of the sound engineer harder. And as the band want to sound as good as possible, they should always work with the sound engineer and therefore achieve optimum results. So, a serious one for now, please.
Check. 1, 2, check. Wow, check.
Okay, and can you hear yourself in your monitor okay?
Not as well as I might like.
Oh.
A little bit crackly.
He's going to say.
Check.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Is that okay?
That's lovely, thank you.
Okay, so just before I ask the boys to play, what I'm going to do now is get them to play a song and try and balance the sound. And one thing that you will probably notice is that instruments which can sound great on their own, in the context of a whole mix, the sounds may need to be changed. For example, a guitar may sound really nice and full on its own, but when played with another guitar, a drum kit and a bass guitar, it might just sound too muddy. So it's all about getting them to play, to make sure they're happy on stage as musicians, so they'll play well, and to make sure you're happy with the sound out front so the audience will enjoy the show. So guys, if you could do a song, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. But
You're welcome. My heart hurts.
if you could just stay there for a little bit longer, please. So basically, once you've done one song with a band, then you can stop and you can check how they're doing on stage. So make sure their monitors are okay. So Callum, how's the drum feel?
I don't have anything in it.
No, so it needs to be coming up a bit in volume. Okay, no problem at all.
Just have you.
Hey?
Just have you.
You got
It's
me all
only
right now?
you.
That better? Okay. And others? Bit more
Yeah, a
burn?
bit more burn across.
Yeah.
And could I go up a tiny bit in mine?
Can I have a little bit more of a strutters?
You
What do you
certainly
want
can.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get more
so-
effects in that as well.
And a good thing to do is to get each person to play individually. So if Tom, if you could play your guitar, please. Yeah, okay. So that way we can tell them